This FieldView Seed Scripting webinar was recorded to help FieldView farmers and dealers understand the value of FieldView Seed Scripts and highlight how easy it is to create a FieldView Seed Script. This table of contents was added to provide the ability to view specific content that was presented on the webinar. Please feel free to fast forward to any specific content you wish to view. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I hope that the sunrise for you all is as beautiful as it is here in my neck of the woods in here southern Illinois. We have a great webinar planned for you this morning to cover FieldView Seed Scripts. We do just want to acknowledge that we hope all of you are staying healthy and safe. All that is changing daily, and the challenges that we are navigating each day worldwide, one thing remains the same, and that's you, our nation's farmers and dealers, press on to prepare our food supply, and we are very blessed and thankful for that. And we appreciate everything that each one of you does to pull on that rope and help achieve that goal. So thank you for making that happen, and we appreciate your time here this morning to sign on and learn a little bit more about FieldView Seed Scripts. We do have a few other webinars that you probably saw, and we do encourage you to check those out and hope that you give us some good feedback with a survey that will be sent out after the webinar. So today on the call, we have a couple folks. We have Jeff Heinen, who is in Indiana, and Jeff is going to be our main presenter this morning, and he's going to bring us a wealth of knowledge from his personal experiences, both on his family farm and then with many years in the field as an agronomist and working with our farmers and dealers on the Indiana and further east area of the country. I'm also Mindy McDermott here, and I am a learning and development specialist at Climate, and so I'll serve as the host. I do want to take just a couple minutes to cover some housekeeping for us. When you are on this webinar, we want you to get a lot of great value from the webinar, and one of the best ways that we can provide value to you is by answering your questions. And so you can ask questions two ways. You can send them in the chat, which is over on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also send questions in by the Q&A, and we will address those questions most likely at the end of the webinar to keep the flow going, but we will stay on and answer your questions as long as they keep coming in. Without further ado, Jeff is going to get us started here on what we should consider as we're thinking about writing prescriptions on our farm. So Jeff, I will turn things over to you. Good morning, and thanks for imparting a small amount of your knowledge for us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mindy. A very small part. As Mindy said, my name's Jeff Heinen. I am a field product specialist with the Climate Corporation. I'm based in Northeast Indiana. I am currently in my home office, and I've got my two hamsters over here in a cage running my internet. So hopefully they don't get tired and jump out and we lose me, but it does tend to happen from time to time. I live about 2.5 miles from the family farm where my brothers and I farm. And so I'm going to give you some of my inside knowledge on some of the research that we've done. We're going to walk through how to build a prescription within the FieldView scripting system and kind of the methodology that I take in trying to build that script logically so that we can be more profitable on the ground that we farm. So the first question I ask here is, what should I consider when I write a prescription, right? There's a lot of different factors that go into this. We want to rank our fields. If we're only going to script a few fields, we want to look at the fields that have the most variability, have the highest potential return for putting the right amount of seed in the right spot in that field. We want to think about fields that may have a lot of variable fertility so that we can take advantage of that fertility and really push some of those good spots in the field, which is really what we're trying to do. We want to leverage the hybrid portfolio we've got, and I'm going to show you how we do that by actually looking at the genetic data behind these hybrids, whether they're a fixed ear hybrid or whether they're a flex ear hybrid. The way we used to talk about, corn hybrids, That's going to have a big impact on how we script, drainage, equipment, and then check strips and checking to see whether we're gaining the advantage out of using these variable rate prescriptions. So ranking your fields, you can do that within our yield analysis tool in FieldView. So if you're on FieldView Cab or you're using the black and orange app, you can do the yield analysis, look at those fields where you've seen consistency over years, look at the ones that have the highest yield potential, look at the maps and try to think about what fields will be able to take the most advantage of building these variable rate scripts. Uh, Hybrids. I already talked a little bit about hybrids, but this plays a big role in how we script. I remember years ago we used to talk about this as fixed ear and flex ear hybrids. You know, this one's moderate flex. This one's got a lot of flex. What we do within our research is we look at each hybrid and we run population trials. And if you're looking at my screen, you'll see these curves at the bottom of the screen. That's basically just a population curve that we generate for all of Bayer's germplasm. And what I mean by that is we know that as population goes up, yield goes up to a certain point, right? And then it curves over, and that where that curves over, that is the maximum rate that we'd want to look at for any particular hybrid. Well, a flex ear hybrid, obviously, that curve is going to be different than what it looks like for a hybrid that really needs population in order to generate its maximum yield. So we take that into account in our scripting system. And then we want to think about equipment capability, right? I will talk about this when we start building a script and we look at zones, but if you're running a planter that uses electric drives, we can put in very finely detailed prescriptions there because those electric drives will change your population in an instant based on your GPS location of where you're at in the field. Whereas a hydraulic drive, if we're trying to put in a whole lot of zones, a lot of times it takes those hydraulic drives a while to get up to that next population that we just crossed into. And so what it does is it's trying to get to that higher population in a particular spot. And it sometimes if we've got these zones too tight, the hydraulic drive can't even get there by the time you've already passed into another zone and it tries to bring itself back. And so we get, as you see the image on the screen, this kind of zipper effect. And so I tell people it's kind of like a dog chasing its tail, right? It never quite gets to where you want to be. And so you don't really gain the full advantage out of a variable rate script. So hydraulic drives work perfectly fine for variable rate seeding, but we want to make sure that we stay in that 3 to 5 zones within a field so that we have time to really get the right population in each one of those spots. And then we want to make sure that we have good boundaries, right? So if you've got areas of a field where you've got ways or you've got a water tower, electric tower, something like that, one, we want to make sure that we have those carved out because one of the things that our system uses is satellite imagery, and we want to make sure that we are capturing the images properly. So, you know, if you have a great big electric tower or a windmill or something in there and you haven't carved that out, it's going to be a big red spot, right, from the satellite image. It knows that that spot is bad and it doesn't know why, but we want to make sure that we have good, accurate boundaries so that we build the script within that boundary. Now, if we're building a script based on yield only, then we need to have a minimum of 2 years of yield data, and at least one of those years has to be corn. We do not have to have yield data to build a prescription in our system. If I just pick up a brand new 60-acre field down the road here from a neighbor, I can put that boundary into my FieldView account. If you give it 24 to 48 hours, it'll load the last 3 years of satellite imagery into the system for that field. And then we can build a variable rate script based on the plant health that's been there over the past 3 years. And so that allows us to capture the good spots of the field, the bad spots of the field. So we can actually build a pretty accurate script having never had yield data. Now, in my opinion, I think yield data enhances that. It gives us, if we have enough years of yield data, we really can generate a good script based on yield data, but we can use both. So why do I want to use a FieldView Seed Script? I used to build my own scripts within a program called SMS. I've started when we developed FieldView Seed Scripts, I started using it, one, because it was way simpler. The system built the zones for me. I didn't have to input a lot of data in order to generate those zones. So it saves me a lot of time. Our research says that our zones that we build within FieldView have an 80% repeatability, which means the good spots in the field are still going to be the good spots over and over and over again as we build those scripts. I can use that genetic data from the hybrids I'm planting, which I can't do in some other programs, so I can capture that. And then our data out of multiple years of research shows that we're going to pick up anywhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 bushel gain by using a variable rate script versus just a static rate. This is obviously, I have seen some of my research fields where we picked up 13 bushel. I've seen some where it didn't pick up more than 1 or 2. I've never seen where a variable rate script loses to a static rate. So you're not going to lose in this process. So there's a lot of advantages to utilizing variable rate seeding. So let's jump into a demonstration. I'll walk you through a script on one of my fields and kind of my thoughts around how we do that. So let me here, jump over here, expand that out. So if you're watching your screen, you're going to see I am now in my FieldView account. You'll see all these different fields scattered throughout the this region. A lot of these are either growers who have shared their account with me so that I can look at their data, help them with some decision making, or these are fields where I've run research trials in the past. So there's quite a few fields that I track. But I am going to go over here. If you're watching my hand move around, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on prescriptions, which is at the top of the screen. That's going to take just a little bit to load, pulls me into our scripting system. And then rather than searching through a long list up here of fields, I'm right up here in this box and I'm going to search. I know the field I want to script. It's what I call my Jefferson Center farm, and I'll pull that data up. So from sit right now, this field is a mile away from me here in Northeast Indiana. You'll see, you know, this field has a lot of variability. You can see where the water kind of flows through here. So there's a lot going on in that field. You'll see this little circle. I get this question a lot off to the west of this field. That's an old horse race track from a guy that used to run horses through there. He moved to Florida. The grower ripped out the horse track, but you can still see where it shows up in satellite imagery as well. Off to your left, you'll see we have 2 types of scripts: fertility scripts, planting scripts. Already got a fertility script in here that I built for this field. If I click on planting, you're going to see all the prescriptions you have built for this field. In order to generate a FieldView advanced script in our system, we charge $1 an acre for that. So you think about that, that's pretty cheap to build a prescription. But one of the advantages I have is that, so this is a 52-acre field. So I pay my $52 in order to generate a script, and now I can generate as many scripts as I want for that field. I can do it for every hybrid that I purchased. I can change things, I can tweak things, and I can, it allows me to do a lot of scripting as I go through this process. In this case, we're going to build a new script. I don't like the ones that I've got here, so if I'm going to build a new prescription, off to your left, down to the bottom, you're going to see where it says Create New Prescription. So I'm going to click on that plus sign there. I can create a manual prescription where I have to draw all the zones myself, make all the decisions on where to put those zones, how to make that, and so you're allowed to do that, and that is free in our system. However, the advanced planning prescription builds in all those insights that I've already talked about, and so that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to plant a corn prescription, and I'm going to create an advanced planting prescription. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click start. The first thing that the system does is it searches the cloud, so the data that I've got for this field in the cloud, and says, here are all the layers of data that you can use in order to let us build your management zones to create the prescription. So you'll see, in 2018 over here, it was corn. This field yielded 168 bushel. You've got the field health data, etc. You'll see that in 2019, this is blank. Well, the reason for that is that we had a pretty rough year here in northern Indiana last year, and this field did not get planted to a crop. So this was prevent plant. So obviously, I do not want to use a year where I did not have a crop in the field in order to try to generate a prescription for that. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click on this little blue box with the check mark. When I do, it says, hey, are you sure you want to remove a layer of data? All of our insights from past research says is more data is better, right? And so we like to keep all the layers of data in. But in this case, obviously I don't have a crop there, so I want to remove that layer. So it's just checking to say, are you sure you want to remove that? And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to click on remove that layer. So now you'll see this box is unchecked. So I'm going to roll down through here. I've got lots of data in for this field. You go down to like the drought year of 2012. This field averaged 111 bushel per acre for corn. If I wanted to, I can remove the drought year of 2012. I caution farmers against taking out too many years of data, because even the drought year of 2012, even though this yielded very poorly, that year the data captured the variability in the field very well. I know very succinctly where the bad spots are in that field and where the good spots are in that field. And so I'm going to leave 2012 in. 2011 is blank, and so I've got plenty of years of data, so I'm going to remove 2011. So now I've got all these layers of data. You'll see the green check mark off to the right. This is what I'm going to use then to build my, my management zones, to build my scripts. I'm going to go down to the lower right-hand corner here, and I'm going to click next. Now we need just a little more information in order to generate the script. Needs a planting date. I'm going to leave this as May 1, which is the default. The planting date really has no impact on how the management zones are built. It just wants that as a placeholder to have an idea of when you're going to plant. And then we have to select hybrid. So here is where I'm going to type in a hybrid, DKC 6435. So you'll see the database will find those hybrids, and you're going to see 6435 listed. And you'll see this little bitty box here that says tested. That means that as the system builds the prescription, it's actually going to access the research data, those population curves that I talked about earlier. It's going to pull that data in, and it's going to build the prescription specifically based on those genetics. So this is a moderately fixed ear hybrid, and so it's probably gonna bring the population up a little bit. If we put in a hybrid here that was brand new, maybe doesn't have the testing, you won't see that box. You can also build a script for competitive hybrids. So let's say I'm using Pioneer 1197 here. You can put that hybrid in. It will not have the tested box, but what our system will do is, if that's a 111-day hybrid, it will access all of the 111-day hybrids in our database, and it will average that population curve together into one curve, and it will apply that to that hybrid. And so you'll still get a very solid script even using that. It just won't be quite the same as an untested hybrid. So I'm going to click on DeKalb 6435. Now it wants me to put in a target yield. Target yield is very important, because if I tell our system that I'm an optimist, I want to grow 300 bushel corn on this field, the data layers that are there, and the computer looks at the hybrid and says, well, one, you're crazy. Two, if you want to produce 300 bushel corn, you're going to have to populate this at 46,000. And so it's going to try to match up that population curve to generate the yield you're trying to get it to generate. So I tell growers, on your target yield, you want to be an optimist, but you also want to be real in what you think the top end for this particular field can make. This field has grown 200 bushel corn before in spots. On average, you'll see over here to the right, it says the highest average corn yield out of the data layers I've got in there is 171 bushel. So I am going to put in 200 bushel corn. That's going to be my target yield. I want to put in an average seed cost. You want to do this because it will generate some economics on what the cost of seeding this field would be. So ballpark figure, I'm going to put in 300, and then what price I'm going to sell my grain for. I'm going to put in $3.75. So just trying to be ballpark on where we're at. Now I've got all this background data ready to go. My data layers are in. It knows what hybrid I'm planting, what yield I'm trying to get. I'm going to go down here to the lower right-hand corner then and click on that blue box that says next. When I do that, all of that data that I put in, information, it flies to the supercomputer out there somewhere in California, and it chews through that, and it kicks back just this quick what the computer believes based on all of our input and all of our research data over the years, what is the best way to carve up this field and populate it. So you'll see here, if I want to get 200 bushel yield out of 6435 in this field, I need an average population, according to the computer, of 35,400. Now I can start to tweak this to fit more what I believe this field should look like. So one of the first things I do is I run a John Deere 1770 NT with electric precision V drives on it. And so the computer says 4 zones is what we need for this field. I would like to carve it up a little more detailed than that because I know my electric drives can handle that. So up here where it says number of zones, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go down here and say I would rather have about 6 zones. So I'm going to click on that. As soon as I make any changes in this screen, it will automatically change what that script looks like based on the change that I just made. You'll also see if I scroll to the bottom, every change I make is captured. So I can keep making changes, and there'll be different versions down across the bottom, and you'll see the original is still there. I can always go back to that original computer recommended script as we look at that. So you'll see this field. It is pretty highly variable. This area where my cursor is at is the best soil on this field. Many times in a good year, we'll see on the yield map 230 bushel corn out of here. And on this low ground through here, where you'll see this zone, you'll see 150 bushel corn, sometimes less than that. So it's a very highly variable field. Now I look at 35,400. Typically, if I'm going to static rate this field, I am going to plant at about 34,000. That's the way we used to do it. We haven't planted any of our fields static rate for quite a few years, probably been 6 or 7 years. Variable rating has shown us quite a bit of value on our farm, but if I were to static rate it, it'd probably be around 34,000. If I go down and look at the zones in that really good green zone that I showed you earlier, that over here is zone 4. The computer says that needs to be populated at 37,400. So if I'm happy with that, and I don't think that's too aggressive, I can stick with this script, or I can go up here to this slider bar. So you'll see in the upper right hand corner here where this ball is at, that is what I call the aggressiveness bar, right? So if I want to look at this script and say, you know what, that is a little too aggressive for me, I want to bring that aggressiveness now, I can click and grab that ball and drag it to the left and let go. It's going to generate the exact same zones, but you'll see now it brought my populations down to 33,800. And so I'm a little less aggressive. That green spot, that zone 4, is now at about 36,000. I'm a little happier with that. 37,000, 38,000, probably going to be a little too aggressive for me there. Some people may want to put it there, some may not. So 33,800 is a little closer to that 34 average that I would static rate. So I'm pretty happy with that. If I wanted to do some very detailed tweaks to this script and say, you know what, I want this script to be over 34,000 average. It's just where I want it to be. I know I can't drag this ball any further. It's going to throw this off, but I can change my target yield, right? So every time I change target yield, the system's going to look at that population curve again and say, well, I need a few more plants to get to that next yield step. There we go. So there's 210. So by just adding a 10 bushel to my yield goal there, it now says if I want to get that extra 10 bushels, I need to populate at 34,600 average. So now I'm good with that. I look down here and I see these where each zone and the population is there. I think it's capturing everything pretty well. I'm pretty happy with this script. So you can change things as you move around till you're happy with what you're seeing based on your knowledge of the field. I'm pretty good with that. Once I'm happy with my prescription, I go down here to the lower right-hand corner, and I'm going to click on Finish in Editor. Once I finish in the editor, it sends me back to the editing tool, and here is where I can continue to make some changes to my prescription. Here's where if you wanted to make any manual edits, you wanted to do any other pieces to this, you can add. We can merge some of these zones together. You'll see the here in the right hand corner, we've got the drawing tools for the field. You've got merge, split. Let me move this map back around a little bit. Draw, so I can, and I'll show you how to draw something in here. But if I click on a zone on the map, it's going to show that zone off to this left bar. You'll see, so this is the best part of the field as I've talked. According to the computer, at this population, 36,600, that zone 4 is going to kick out an average yield of 231 bushel. If I click on some of the rougher spots in this field, that's zone 2. That'll be 172 bushel, and I'm going to be populating that at 31,500. If I want to be more aggressive in this good spot, I can go over here and I can manually edit this. So 36,600 is what's there now. Let's say I would rather have this spot. I want to push it a little bit. I'm going to tweak that to 37,000 plants. So now I've made that manual edit. Everything's good there. Looks good. I can underlay this prescription with any layer of data. In order to do that, I can go down here to the lower right-hand corner, and you'll see right now I am looking at my zones, and I'm looking at the population that's planned for each one of those zones. But I'm going to click on Change Map, and I'm going to underlay this prescription with the yield from 2018 just to see if our system is capturing things correctly. So I can click on that. This is the actual combined yield map that for 2018. And so you can see these zones are capturing those spots pretty effectively. And so I've seen this. If you've got layers of data in the system, our FieldView scripting system actually carves these zones out very, very well. And so it allows me to capture each one of these little pieces to the puzzle. I've had questions on guys say, well, we used to build prescriptions based on soil type. How come we don't do that with soil type anymore? Well, let me take this scripting system. Let me underlay this map with the a base map, and I can look at Surgo soil data there. So this is what the soil types look like in that field. And so you can see the script that we're building based on yield here does not match up real well with the soil types in this field. There's two predominant soil types here. And if I scripted based on those, I really would not be capturing the value. And I have seen this time and time again. We've done research over the years where we created variable rate scripts based on soil type, based on yield, based on imagery, based on combinations of all three. And what we found is that at the end of the day, yield tends to bring us the best predictive zones in a field on where those good areas are and where the bad areas are. And that's exactly what we would expect. You can underlay this with health imagery from years past. So I can look at more maps here. I can go to in-season vegetation or scouting imagery. Let's go to 2018 where we had corn. Roll back to pre-harvest and look at, say, August 23rd. Done. And so now you can see why health imagery also is predictive of where the best corn is in this field. So it's very similar to the yield map. You can see where the bad spots are. So this is how satellite imagery really is helpful in this process, and why I think we see value in utilizing satellite imagery. So I'm going to change this back now to the population. And I want to do something here. I want to draw in a check block, right? I want to check and see whether my variable rate prescription here is going to out yield, say, a static rate of 34,000, like we talked earlier. In order to do that, I'm going to go up here and use these drawing tools. So you'll see I'm going to click on draw. I can draw a polygon. I can draw a pivot. If I wanted to create this script and have a variable rate prescription under the pivot, and then have my pivot corners just a static rate of, say, 30,000 or 28,000, I can draw the pivot in, and then I can carve out the pivot corners, and I can create a script under the pivot and use that static rate outside the pivot. In this case, I am going to draw a square. So I'm going to click on square. And then what I can do is, you'll see where it says click and drag a rectangle. So I'm going to click about right here. I'm going to put a check strip right down the middle of this field. I'm going to go right here, draw this block. I'm going to stay off the end rows. I don't really want to have the static rate there. So I'm going to click, and when I let go, you'll see where I now have this block. So I'm going to click save. Now what happens is it saves and overrides my variable rate prescription, puts in a new zone, and you'll see that zone is now over here at the left. It is now zone 2. So I'm going to put in zone 2 at 180 bushel, and then I'm going to put in a static rate of 34,000 in that zone. So now I've got a variable rate, but I've got this check block down the middle. When I harvest this fall, I could use FieldView and I could draw a region report over here, get a yield for the variable rate block. I can draw a region report where the static rate. I can draw another region report on the other side of this. So I'll have two comparisons versus a straight up 34,000. So is this variable rate prescription delivering that extra 5 bushel that Jeff Heinen tells me it should be getting me? And so this allows you to I can put check blocks all over this field if I wanted to. Let's say I wanted another block right in the middle of that good spot. I can draw another polygon or another square, and I can say, well, give me a check block right here. I can save that one, and I can take that zone now and put that one in at 34,000. And so I can start to play with things. I like to put a check block in a field or two. I don't put check blocks in every field, but I'll take a field or two, just put a check block in, and I want to make sure that I can get a good, clean combine pass out of this script, out of that check block, so then I get a really good comparison between them. So as I do my review, I'm pretty happy with now all the tweaks I've made to the prescription. You'll see off to the left in the lower corner, right now my average population is 34,600 seeds, and it's going to take me 23 bags in order to plant this field. So that all looks good. Now I want to think about exporting this to my monitor so that I can now run this script through my planner and get everything planted the way I want it. In order to do that, I have a couple ways of doing that. We can do bulk exports, and I'll show you that in a minute. Or I can export an individual field one at a time. It really, it depends on what you're doing. I tend to do all my scripts first, export all of them out at the same time. So then I only have to deal with that once as far as getting that to my planner monitor. If I want to export this field just as it sits right now, you'll see up here, you've got this export button, right? The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go off to the right here, and I'm going to click Save, because I want to save this script the way I have it. So I click on it, wait just a little bit. My script was successfully saved. Then if I look at export, right? If I'm running my planner with a 2020, a Precision Planning 2020 monitor, once I click Save, that prescription will automatically sync to my FieldView cab. So all I have to do is when I open FieldView cab, sync, that script will be on my iPad. Once I connect my iPad to my 2020, I can drop that prescription directly into my 2020 and I can make it active and I'm good to go. So if you're running a Precision Planning 2020, I don't have to do a thing other than bringing it in through my iPad. If I'm running a John Deere system, if my John Deere 2630 is what is controlling my planter, and I use my John Deere, I can connect my FieldView account with my John Deere account, in which case this prescription will go straight to my John Deere account. I can bring it down wirelessly into my 2630 monitor, make it active. I'm ready to go plant. Or I can go the old school way. If I've got a Case Pro 700 or I'm running an Ag Leader monitor driving my planner, we've accounted for that. So we're going to download that then onto a thumb drive. And I want to download it in the format that my planter needs to be using. So I'm going to click Change. And you'll see it'll then ask, how do I want to download it? So we've already in advance, so you don't have to do any kind of file conversions or anything like that. If I am running a Case Pro 700, I'm going to click on Pro 700, in which case it's going to take this prescription, it's going to download it as a CN1 file, which is what the Pro 700 requires, and I'll be able to do that. If I'm creating a fertility script, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, and I'm running, say, a nitrogen prescription with a Raven, I can drop this into a Raven Viper file. I can run it into a Trimble file. So you can see we can download these prescriptions in whatever format you require for your rate controller. But I'm not going to download this right now. And we're going to sit there. We're going to look at that. So now my prescription's good. If I hit close here, now it's going to take me back to where we started. And you're going to see I've got prescriptions over here, but the prescription we just created is here. It is one notch down. So all these prescriptions that are in here, I tend to create multiple prescriptions for a field. I tend to create prescriptions for the hybrids that I've purchased, right? So if you farm with brothers or with other people in the operation, my brothers have a tendency to back the planter up and fill it with whatever pallet of corn is in the front, right? And so I don't like that. I've assigned things obviously per field. So I create multiple prescriptions where if we get the wrong stuff in the planter, I want to make sure that when I get to the field, I've got a prescription for that just in case. So I'll create 2-3 scripts for each field with different hybrids in there. But you always have one that says primary. See this up here in the corner of this area, it says primary. This is the script that will sync. If you're running that 2020, that's the script that will sync to your FieldView cab. If I want to change that, so here's the prescription we just built right below it. You'll see these 3 little dots. If I click on those, it allows me to either go back in and edit the prescription. I can rename it if I don't like the naming. I can make another copy of that, but I'm going to set this script we just made as primary. So click. It says this is your primary script. I'm going to click Save Changes. And now here off to the left, that script we just, now the primary script, and that is the prescription that will sync to my FieldView cab. And so I want to make sure that the one I plan to run is in there, but I can also access these other prescriptions that I've created. But this is the one that will automatically be there available for that field right out of the gate. If I wanted to go in here and edit this prescription, like I said, I can click on those 3 dots. I can click Edit. It take me right back to that editing tool where I can start to play with those kind of, edits that we made. Let's say I want to get rid of that block right there. I can delete that. I can change some things, etc. But I'm going to go right back out here and I'm going to close this up. So the last thing that I want to do then is about bulk export, right? So if I want to, then I've created say 20 scripts for 20 different fields. You'll see up here where it says export options. I want to click on export options. And now I can click on my operation. You'll see I have 13 planting prescriptions primary in here. I can export all of them. If all these extra prescriptions I've built, I can export all of them, or I can just export the primary scripts. And this would be an export onto a thumb drive. So if I wanted to click on that, I'm going to click on it. I can say what format do I want to send it out, and I can send it out as a precision file. But this allows me then to export all those scripts all at once without having to do it one at a time. Okay, so let me exit out of this. I can always come back in here if we have other questions. I'm going to drop this down, go back over here. All right. And Andy, I'm going to turn things back over to you unless we have questions, and I can start to answer questions, or we can finish up.
We do have a few questions that have come in, Jeff, and you may want to stay back on your in the scripting product or on your webpage. Okay. So a couple that we have coming in here so far. Talk to us a little bit about what crops we can do prescriptions like this with, and when do we plan to expand to other crops for scripting?
Very good question. So we can actually create, with our manual scripting, we can create prescriptions for any crop that you want, because you're going to be building those populations in manually. We can do that for beans. We can do it for for other crops. As far as our advanced scripting tool that I walked through today, we are working on an advanced scripting tool for beans. Hopefully that will be coming soon. But one of the options that we can do is we can use the zones that we've created here within our scripting system, and we can use that within the manual system. So let's say that I paid my $1 per acre to create these really nice zones, but I want to create a soybean prescription using these zones. If I go down here to create new prescription, and I go to prescription now, I can say soybeans, I can click on manual prescription. One of the things that you'll see is that the management zones allowed for me to use are all these ones that I've built, right? So you can either use soil types, you can use some zones you've built by hand, but the script that we just built, those zones, in here, and you'll see it right here where it says primary planting zones 2020. I could click on that, and then I could go next, and I could start to build a manual prescription based on that. I'll have to take each zone and assign a soybean population to each one of them, but it allows me, again, that $1 per acre that it costs me to build these zones, I can use those for nitrogen. I can use those zones for soybeans. I can use it for a variety of other things. So it is available within our manual system.
Perfect. So speaking of the pricing, can a script be viewed or built before purchase? And at what point does the $1 per acre get charged? So talk to us about if you have scripted these multiple scripts here that you have on Jefferson Center, how many acres are you getting charged for here?
So for any field boundary, you're only going to get charged $1 per acre. That's the way the system works. Unfortunately, you can't create a script and then get charged for it within our system. But what I tell guys is we have a guarantee on these prescriptions. So let's say that you go in and our system's going to say you pick the fields that you would like to script, and say you pick this field, this field, this field, ends up being 300 acres. You're going to get charged $300. You go back to our scripting system, and now you can script those fields as much as you want. Let's say that you script 2 of those fields, and you're like, hey, that looks great. But that third field that you script, you're like, man, I'm not getting any good scripts out of here that I like. I want my money back for that script. So we can refund your money for that particular script. You'll get that back. So we do have a satisfaction guarantee on these scripts. As long as you, if you get a script, you don't like it, you don't want to use it, you don't have to pay for it.
Great.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, I think that does. On your screen here, Jeff, you show how you built some check blocks here. Do those always have to be built in parallel to your planting rows, or can those go across the rows?
Now you can build these whatever direction you want, right? I can make these blocks look however I want. So if I edit this prescription, if you're still watching your screen, I'm going to go back in here. Let's say that I want a check block like on a circle down here or something like that. If I go to draw, I can draw a polygon. And now I can start clicking dots in whatever shape I would like. And as long as I go back then to the original dot, it's going to create that as a zone. If I save that zone, it now becomes a new block or even a new zone. I've had guys say, well, this spot over here it's the drown out spot, but it's some of the best dirt I've got, and I want to populate that so I can draw just a particular area and say, hey, that's actually really good dirt. I want to populate that at 38,000. And so I'm going to push that one hard, and boom, now I have created a brand new zone using the polygon tool to create that. So you can actually create however shape, size, check block, or carve out any kind of spots that you want using those drawing tools.
Excellent, thank you. Mm-hmm. Can planting and fertility scripts be bulk exported together? And do prior year scripts need to be deleted from the CAB app?
So question number one, fertility scripts and seeding scripts. So we do not have the ability to export those together. And typically, if you're exporting one, you want to, those will reside in a different spot on your monitor. Or like in my case, I use a 2020 monitor to run the planner. We use a Raven Viper to control our anhydrous bar. So I'm going to want to export all of my fertility scripts in one format and all of my planting scripts in the other format. So unfortunately today we can't export them together, but you can bulk export all your fertility, and you can also bulk export all of your planting scripts. And Mindy, what was the second question?
Yes, I should have broken those out for you. I apologize. Do prior year seed scripts or any scripts need to be removed from the CAB app?
Right. They do not. So once they're in your CAB app or they're in your monitor, they're going to be there. And what I do tell guys is that it could get very confusing as you get more and more scripts in there. I tend to delete my prescriptions every year and start from scratch so that there's no confusion on which prescription I want to execute. Because if you're like me and you build multiple scripts for a field, if you have all of those residing on there, you're going to have a big long list of prescriptions, and it can get a little bit cumbersome.
And so if I leave those scripts on my monitor, can I use those year after year, or do I get charged for those again if I use them in the subsequent season? How does that work?
Well, so once they're on your monitor, they're going to be there. It's in the form of a shape file, and it's going to be there. Now, I tell guys there are changes, whether it be tile, you've got another year of yield data in there. You can actually use that script that you had from a couple years ago. I don't typically recommend it because I think there are changes going on in any of those fields, and it is way, way better to tweak your scripts year over year to make sure you're really capturing what you think you should capture.
Okay, excellent. That's all the questions that we have so far. We're going to jump back over to the slide deck, and I want to show you some resources, or just highlight some of the resources that we have in our Knowledge Center for getting the monitor from your FieldView CAB app into getting the script from your FieldView CAB app into your monitor. And we want to take those and highlight those for you. So we have a website. Part of our website is support.climate.com, and there are resources there. And one of the things that we have most recently added are some videos and some step-through guides for getting a FieldView Seed script into your monitor so you can execute that script. So we've added videos and walkthrough documents, just like you see the pictures here on your screen for the Pro 700 shapefile, as well as the Pro 600 and Pro 700 CN1 file types. We have also added Ag Leader Integra and the John Deere shapefile steps. So we'll continue to build that library out, but we have added these things. We will also send these out to you via links after this webinar, so that you can see exactly where to find those on our Knowledge Center. And so I hope that you are using our Knowledge Center. It's a wealth of information that has been compiled by several people at the Climate Corporation. When we add features and get those into the product for you, we want to make sure that you know exactly how to use those. So support.climate.com is a great place to find that information. And so a question just came in asking if we have these steps for Raven videos, and we do not yet, but that one is on our list to get additional monitors on, as well as some 2020 information for both Gen 2 and Gen 3. Those are added. It's made it a little bit more difficult being at home where we can't access all those monitors, but we are still working on it. So when you do call in, if you do happen to need help from our support team, so there is some information that you want to have with you, because our support folks are going to ask for that information. And they're going to ask for your FieldView username, the field name, if you're using FieldView Cab app or FieldView app, and the version information. You can find that information in the settings buttons on both apps. They're going to want to know what iOS version your iPad is running, and so you can find that in the settings on your iPad. They also may ask what iPad model you're running, and you can find that in the settings version also. We also have information on how to find that on our Knowledge Center. So if you just search iPad model, you'll find that document. They also may ask for the equipment make and model that you're running. So what planter, what rate controller, and so some of those things that they may ask for, and then they'll check in and see what troubleshooting steps you've already taken. One thing that I always like to say that really helps is just that power on and power off that iPad. I know that whenever I take my computer here to our tech stop, one of the first things they ask is, when was the last time you turned your computer on and off? And that usually helps with a lot of things for whatever reason. It just kind of gives a nice little refresh, just like we get refreshed every day after we've had a good night's sleep. So just make sure that you maybe try that too. Our folks on the support team can be reached at support@climate.com or on our 800 number, 888.924.747. And so we do have a more question. We will keep asking them as they come in, if you continue to send those in. So Jeff, another one here is, can you do dual hybrid prescriptions when you are scripting? How do you do that?
Yes, you can do dual hybrid prescriptions. What you won't capture the full genetic data out of each of those in the advanced scripting system. But if you're, let me expand this back out. If you're looking at my screen right now, we'll go back to the field. If you wanted to say plant one hybrid in the green zone and another hybrid in the red zones, there's a little blue thing up here. It says RX settings that you'll see in the left-hand panel. I'm going to click on RX settings. You'll see that right now I'm planting 6435, but there's another little option here that says add another hybrid. So if I click on add another hybrid, I can add another hybrid. So let's say I want to put in as my second hybrid DKC 64, and we'll just pick We'll just say 6487. Now I've got the second hybrid in there, and if I go back to my zones up here at the top, now you'll see there's another box over here I have to select for each zone, which is hybrid. So I've got my target yield for that zone, my population for that zone. But let's say in zone one, if I click here in zone one, it's going to highlight zone one over here. If I click on zone one, I want to change zone one's hybrid to that 6487. So I can sit here and I can say, okay, which hybrids I want to plant in which zone. And then if I export that, it will export that as a multi-hybrid script. And so your planter, if you've got a multi-hybrid planter, it will read that as switch to the other hybrid, and it'll plant each of those.
Are there plans for the capacity to utilize the science to script for both hybrids in the same field? Do you know, Jeff?
I mean, that's in the plans. That's a little heavier engineering there, the programmers tell me, in order to do that. And so we tend to just kind of take the dominant hybrid that's going to be planted in that field. So let's say that I want to plant one hybrid under a pivot and another hybrid on the outside corners. I'm going to script with using the actual genetic information for the hybrid that's under the pivot. And then I will script the second hybrid and just either input manually the population I'm going to use there, or just use a population average. But I mean, that's in the works, but as of today, we only build in, obviously, the genetic piece will be on the predominant hybrid for the field.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in here this morning. So I just want to thank you all for joining us. Jeff, if you just wrap up here as we conclude, what would be the key takeaways you'd like to make sure our participants receive from this webinar?
Well, so here's what I like to get guys to take away. I have a lot of several neighbors that have a nice, either a 1-2-year-old, 3-year-old planter, hydraulic drive, and they still plant a static rate. And I talked to my neighbor Phil over here, and I say, Phil, why are you still planting just a static rate? You got a nice hydraulic drive planter. He says, well, you know what? These scripts are too complicated to make. I'm like, I could show you how to do this on FieldView and do it in a heartbeat, and you could create these scripts. Well, it's too hard to get into my controller. So for a lot of guys, variable rating, it seems like they're going to mess something up by doing this. I believe that planting a variable rate prescription is the easiest way for me to pick up 5 bushels across my operation. We started variable rating on our farm about 6-7 years ago, and I will not plant a static rate anymore. Our soils in northern Indiana are just too variable. I think I'm giving up some yield on the way that if I do that. So my key message to guys is, if you haven't used a variable rate, try it. If you've never used a FieldView script, try that. See how easy it is to build it. Run it on a few fields if you want, but it's something that I think that everybody should be doing. I think we'll all gain some profitability by doing that.
Awesome. Thank you. We do have another question that has come in. How long does it take for a script to transfer from the desktop to the iPad?
So it can vary. It depends on how fast things are running through the system, et cetera. But I've run it before where I click save on a script. If I go right to my iPad, which I've got sitting on my desk here, and I click sync on FieldView Cab, sometimes that script over there in 5 minutes or less. So, I mean, I can't guarantee that, but it's going to vary a little bit, but it happens pretty quickly.
That is pretty fast. Okay, last call for questions before we sign off. We appreciate all of you for joining us and taking a time out of your day to get started with us here at FieldView, and we really appreciate that. So we do have another question. I live in a rural area where there are only 2 Gen 5 plots to cover my maturity range. How accurate are the population recommendations based on the limited data for my area for those hybrids?
So that's a good question. The Gen 5 plots, for those who don't know, that comes out of our research group, our breeding group at Bayer, and that's where they create different row widths, different populations. But our system actually builds in not just our Gen 5 data, but it also builds in all of what we call our market development plots, plots that our territory agronomists are running. So you will have quite a bit of local data within a particular region, but we will regionalize those all that data when we pull that in. So it won't be just Gen 5 locations coming from Nebraska if you're planting in Iowa or vice versa. It will look at your regional area and it tries to build that population based on what's typically run in your area.
Thank you, Jeff. As always, we appreciate you for imparting a small amount of your knowledge to the rest of us here on the line. We appreciate all of you that have stuck with us here throughout the presentation. Again, we do have webinars, more of those hosting or taking place that we're hosting. You can find those on our webpage via the events tab, so climate.com. The events by selecting and typing in events.climate.com. Thank you all so much. We hope that you have a smooth and very successful planting season, and we look forward to having you here again on another webinar. Have a great day.